Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Max, Chief Evangelist over here at Hapily, and we're going to do a video that's going to show all things that you need to know, or the fundamentals on how to send your event-based email communications out of HubSpot using Event Hapily, right? So we're going to go through how to actually build emails that get sent to contacts that contain data about events and sessions and registrations and the fundamentals of how to do that. And then we're going to also talk about how to structure a couple of different workflows and give you some examples of how to think about it and how to actually build this stuff out. All right. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Now, first thing I want to mention here. So Event Hapily, we have three objects here: events, registrants, and sessions. Okay. An event represents the event, so it has a bunch of information about the event on it. A session represents sessions of that event, so it has a bunch of individual information about that particular session taking place at that event. And then registrants have information that's unique to the person who signed up for that event, and they get created as soon as someone signs up for the actual event itself, right? Now, we can use all this data in very creative ways using HubSpot's marketing email tool, as well as HubSpot's workflow tool, to be able to use data from those objects to include in emails that we're sending to people, okay? And to automate a lot of this stuff. So you don't have to send one-off emails to folks about your events. You can put a lot of this stuff on autopilot as much as you wish to, okay? So let's walk through first. If I wanted to build an email in HubSpot that sends information to someone about an event, how do I actually do this, okay? So this is what you're going to do. You're going to start by going to marketing, and you're going to go to email, okay? Now, when you go and create an email, you are always going to want to choose automated. What I'm going to show you here will not work if you choose regular, okay? The reason being is that we rely heavily on sending emails that include personalization tokens from other objects that are not just the contact record, okay? We want to be able to pull information from an event. We want to be able to pull information from a session, from a registrant object, all of which are not contacts, okay? You cannot pull information from other objects that aren't the recipient or the contact in regular one-off emails. You have to do it through automated emails. The reason being is, how is HubSpot supposed to know which object that you're pulling the data from if it's not directly triggered by a specific object getting enrolled in a workflow? This is not just like an Event Hapily thing. This is just like anything. Anytime you're using HubSpot, if you want to send data from an object that's not a contact, you have to do it through a workflow, and it has to be an automated email. Okay, it's just a fundamental lesson to know. All right. So let's go ahead and choose automated, and then we'll hit next. All right. Now, we give you some templates to use, right? We've got these custom templates, right? You know, you might see different templates depending on when you install Event Hapily, but just know that when you install Event Hapily, you will get some templates. I'm not going to use the templates. We're going to build ours from scratch, okay? So I can show you the fundamentals of things you're going to want to do, all right, when you're building any kind of email for this. The template's the easy way out. We're not going to take the easy way out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a very simple, let's go find greeting. Yeah, let's go find the classic drag and drop template, the welcome email, all right, from HubSpot. I'm going to go ahead and choose this, okay? Now, obviously, style the email however you want. Get your logo in there. Do all the normal stuff that you do for an email you're designing in HubSpot. What I really want to get down into is talking about the use of personalization tokens in the email. Let's start with a very basic scenario, what I like to call a registration confirmation email. How would we actually do this? The way that we would send a registration confirmation email is we would want to send that the second somebody registers. How do we know that someone registered for one of our events? A registrant object would get created. So if you know anything about Event Hapily, when someone registers for an event, we create a registrant object to hold all the information about that registration. And so the second that object is created, that's when that person registered. Okay, so the way we would fire that email off is we would basically say, hey, let's go set up a workflow that triggers when someone actually registers for the event, or more so when that registrant object gets created. Now, just to show you real quick, if you go into your workflows after you install Event Happily, you will notice that there are a couple of workflows installed by default, and there is one called the Event Happily Example Registrant Confirmation Email. This is just an example, right? But it illustrates what I'm showing you here. All we need to do is we need to build a workflow that triggers when a registrant object is created. I'll show you how to do this from scratch, right? Let's come back into here. Let's go create a workflow. And what we're going to do here is when we select the object that we want to build the workflow from, we're going to choose Happily Registrant-Based Workflow. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit next, right? Give the workflow a name, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it registration, confirmation, right? Again, you can just use the workflows we give you, right? But what we're doing here is we're going to say, okay, when an event occurs, not to be confused with events that we're talking about, just like analytics events in HubSpot, we're choosing object created as the trigger and hitting save. Now we can refine this. We could say object created and then event name equals something, because when we create registrant records, we have an event name property on the registrant, right, that says what event is this for. So you can filter this to only happen for certain registrants getting created. I'm keeping it easy and just saying literally any registrant that gets created, build this workflow, okay? But then what we need to do is we're going to hit plus, and we're going to say, okay, I want to actually send an email, right, to the contact associated to the registrant. Now, when registrants get created, they have one contact associated to them, and that is the contact that actually created the registration. Are there scenarios where you might associate multiple contacts to a single registration? Sure. It's HubSpot. You can do whatever you want, right? If you want to build something more complex that does that, by all means, go ahead. But by default, it's going to have one contact associated to it, right? Now, what we need to do here is we need to select an automated email. Now, we haven't built this yet, right? So I'm going to hit save, and I'm just going to leave this here as a placeholder, and we're going to go and we're actually going to create the email that we're going to put in here, okay? Now, you could hit create new email here. That opens up this thing. I want to do an actual template here. So I'm actually going to go into the email tool, right? So I'm going to come back. We're going to go to marketing. We're going to go to email, okay? And I'm going to create an email. Again, we're choosing automated here, all right? And I'm actually, again, I'm not going to cheat and use one of our like pre-built templates. I'm literally just going to use the very basic welcome email here. We'll do a whole nother video on our templates one day. But I'm going to show you just like the bare minimum of what you need here, right? Let's start out pretty simple. Let's say, hey, first name. Now, in this scenario, I know I told you we're going to be using registrant-based properties, but we can here use the contact's records first name, right? Remember, when an email gets sent to a contact, it knows which contact it's sending to. So it's always going to have a contact that it can pull tokens from. But we need to send information that's unique to the registrant object in this case. So for the rest of the tokens that we have, for the most part, at least for this example, we're going to be using registrant-based properties, okay? So we're going to say, hey, first name, your registration is confirmed for, and then we want to have the event name in here. You might say, oh, yeah, when I go and do my personalization token, I get it. I can go ahead and put in the happily event token here of event name, right? Wrong. You would think this would make sense, but HubSpot is very weird. Again, right? We got to remember, we're sending this email from a registrant-based workflow. So we can only use registrant-based properties, okay? Don't make this mistake. So in this case, we've thought about this. We know you can only use registrant-based properties in a registrant-based email. So what we actually did is we took a lot of the properties that you would want to pull from the event and we put them onto the registrant object by default. So when registrants get created, they have like event name, event description, event time, event end time, event address, venue, all this kind of stuff already pre-baked into them. So you don't have to do anything funky to get that over there. You can run additional workflows that would bring other stuff over there that's not on there out of the box, right? So you can always do that before you build an email like this. But what we're going to do here is we're actually going to change the object to the registrant. Now, if I was building an event-based workflow, I would use event-based properties. Same thing with session-based properties if I was building a session-based workflow. We'll talk about when it makes more sense to do an event or session-based workflow instead of a registrant one in just a second. So I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to select event name. This is a property that sits on the registrant that automatically gets updated by default. And I'll give it a fallback value of the event. Okay. And I'll hit insert. So it'll say your registration is confirmed for name of the event. And then I can say on, and I can do it again. Personalize. We'll change this to registrant and we'll say start date and time. Okay. Cool. Insert. This is how you would basically continue. You would go and build out the rest of what your email would say, and you would pull in information from the registrant object itself. So anything that's a property on the registrant object can be used as tokens in this email. Again, the only thing you want to think about is you just want to make sure, hey, at the time that I'm sending this email, do I have all the information I need in it? If there was other properties you had to copy over from the contact record or something like that, you just want to make sure in your workflow before it sends the email that you've done all of that before it sends the email. Okay. But anyway, I'm just going to just call this like test registrant email example. Okay. And of course you would go in and you would edit this and you would make it look beautiful, all that stuff. But again, we're just talking about the fundamentals here. We're using registrant based properties. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. What do I got to do? Oh, I need to give it a subject line, of course. So I'll go to settings and I'll do this whole thing. You are confirmed, right? I can drop in personalization tokens if I want to, same way as before, right? And I'm going to hit review and publish. Okay, cool. So we have our email, all right? I'm going to hit I'll do this later. We'll just manually go into the workflows tool now, all right? We'll go to this registration confirmation email. And then what I can do here is I can come and I can change to this registrant email example. Okay. Now, that's basically it. So what would happen in this situation is that the registrant object would get created and then they get sent an email, right? And all those properties from the registrant object will actually come from the registrant object that's enrolled in the workflow. Okay. These types of workflows are great when you want things to happen like directly when the registrant is created. Okay. So registration confirmations, these are good because this could only happen right when the registrant object is actually created, right at the time that they register. Now, let's think of a little bit of a different example here. All right. What if you actually wanted to send out event reminders to people? So the event is coming up. Maybe it's a webinar. Maybe it's an in-person event, whatever it may be. Okay. And you want to be able to send people reminders of saying, hey, the event is tomorrow. The event starts in an hour. The session starts in an hour, whatever it may be. Or perhaps you want to be able to send emails to everyone that attended an event or attended in a session after it happens. Okay. In this case, you would build workflows that are centered around the event object or the session object. Okay. Let me show you how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to create one from scratch. We're not going to use the sample ones we give you because that's cheating. Okay. We're talking about fundamentals here. All right. Let's go do an event-based workflow. And everything you see me doing for an event-based workflow, the same exact concepts apply for a session-based workflow. Okay. So let's go and hit next. And let's call this workflow standard event automated emails, right? This is maybe just like our standard automatic emails that we send out for all the different events that we do. Because we don't want to do it one-off for every single event that we do. All right. So let's say we want to do a couple things. We want to send a 5-day reminder and we want to send a day of reminder an hour before the event starts. Okay. And then we want to send a thank you email to anyone who got marked as attended. How would we do this? Okay. It's pretty simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make it as easy as possible on the enrollment triggers. Okay. I'm just going to say, hey, as soon as any event gets created, put them into this workflow. And then what you're going to do is you're going to start with a delay. Okay. So the second an event gets created, it's going to go into here, but then it is going to delay and not start doing anything until a date property. And that date property is going to be the start date and time. If we want to send an email 5 days before the event, we're going to change this to, instead of saying delay until on date, we're going to change until before date. And what we're going to do is change day before until 5. Okay, and we can get rid of the hours here. All right. And then hit save. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to automatically split this into basically saying, okay, cool. If it comes out of the delay on the assigned date, then do something. But if it got enrolled in the workflow and went through this after the assigned date, do something differently. Okay. Hopefully this isn't happening, but like you could build in fail safes here to either skip certain actions or send yourself a notification or whatever. But this is what I would do to send this email. Okay. I would go ahead and hit plus and then create an email here. So I'm going to go to communications, send email, right? And what I need to do here is I want this email to go out to any contacts associated to this event that have a very specific label, okay? And that association label is not all contacts, but it's going to be contacts registered for the event, okay? I want to select this one specifically is because I do not want to send this to anyone who may have registered but then canceled. If someone canceled, they no longer have this registered association label. We automatically change that in the background. So I'm going to say, hey, send this to anyone who's associated to this event where at this point in time, they're registered for the event, okay? And I'm going to hit save. Now, we still need to build an email. So what I would do here is come in and let's say I just either create a new email or I use the email tool, right? The big difference is I want to be using an email that has event-based personalization tokens, not registrant, not session, unless I'm building a session-based workflow. I would build one with event-based emails, okay? We could have it say, hey, just so you know, this event is in 5 days. We could bring in the event name as a property, all that kind of stuff. I think I could probably do it here. Yeah, so we can bring in the event token, right? So we can say, hey, personalize. And again, you could do this with a full templated email if you wanted to do it, but I'm going to cheat here a little bit. Hey, first name. We can't wait to see you for, and then I'll just say personalization token, event name, right? Again, this works if you're doing the full email editor, right? We can't wait to see you for thing on, and I'll personalize here again on the event, date, start date, end time. And I can include any other information about the event. I could pop in the venue, the address, the whatever, and it'll just pull it in from whatever event is in the workflow, okay? The important thing is it's sending it to any contacts associated at that time. So I'll come here, I'll choose who it's coming from. We'll say it's coming from Max, it's marketing email. Can't wait to see you in 5 days, right? Whatever it may be. And I'm going to save it. What do I need to do? I need to add in, 5-day reminder email from name Max at hapily. All right, cool. Save. Okay. So we've got an email in here. All right. I'm just going to keep using that same one just to give an example. All right. So this will send out this email to all contacts associated to the event. Oh, I still need to select it here. 5-day reminder email. Cool. This will send it out to any contacts associated to the event that have that contact registered for event label. Okay. And this is simply just going to send it out 5 days before the start date and time. Okay. Now, what if I want to do one an hour before it starts on the day of? How am I going to do that? I'm going to come down here. I'm going to do another delay. Okay. And we are going to delay until the date property again. And we're again going to choose start date and time. All right. So on here, we're going to choose before date. And we're going to, again, make sure time of day is using the time from the date property, okay? And it defaults to an hour before, so this is fine. But if you want to do minutes before or whatever, you can do that. I'm going to choose hour before, hit save. And then I would do the same thing. I would literally just come down in here, right? And I would go ahead and send an email. And then I would come into here and I'd say only people who are registered for the event. And then I would make a different email. I'm just going to select this one for the sake of the demo, right? Same idea. Now, why is it important for event-based emails to do it this way? A lot of it comes down to timing, okay? Let's say, for example, your registration is like still open between the time the 5-day reminder gets sent out and the time the 1 hour reminder gets sent out, right? There could be plenty of time for people to register after the 5-day reminder went out, but before the 1 hour reminder went out, right? It doesn't make sense for the people who registered after the 5-day reminder to get the 5-day reminder email. In that case, they'll only get the 1 hour reminder email because you're sending the email to who's ever registered at that time, because we're targeting that registered for event label. Instead of doing some sort of complicated contact workflow or some sort of more complicated registrant-based workflow that's triggering off the time it's created, right? What's cool is that, like, we're literally just saying, hey, send the email to anyone who's registered at this moment, right? This is also what's going to stop someone from getting an email if between the 5-day reminder and the 1 hour reminder email, they cancel, right? Because when the email is getting sent, they won't have that association label for that contact object. Now, what if we want to send an email after the event and we want to target the people who actually attended, not just anyone who registered? This is what we would do. We would add another delay here. So we would then delay until a property, but in this case, we're choosing the end date and time, okay? And so we can use it at that time of the date property, or we can say, hey, you know what? 1 day after, right? Or maybe an hour after the event. It depends on when you update your registration. But keep in mind, like, you can take your registration at the actual event itself, either using the QR code functionality that we have, or by using the CMS module that literally lets you mark people as attended. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, 1 hour after the end date and time. And you can do it after start date if you wanted to, but like, it makes more sense to just like clearly do it off the end date and time, right? We're going to send an email here. So we'll just do communications, send an email. Instead of targeting, again, not all contacts and not registered for event, we're going to send it to people who specifically attended the event. So we're going to target this association label of contact attended the event. The only time a contact is ever going to have this association label to this event is if they actually went to the event and you marked them as attended. All right. And that's how you can target them. You can easily target, you can send another one that goes to people who did not attend if you explicitly marked them as did not attend, or people who canceled. You can email and say, hey, we had such a good time. Aren't you pissed you canceled? If you want to troll them a little bit, you can do that. And then same idea, I would come in here and I would select an email, right, that I built with like event-based personalization tokens, right? Pretty simple. But that's the basics of how emails work in terms of automating them inside of HubSpot using Event Happily. And all this comes down to the really smart data structure we have, right? You have a proper representation of the registrant itself. You have a proper representation of the event, of a session. And then that it makes it really easy to create these different sets of automations that can be sent to people in very precise ways, and you can time it very precisely instead of doing a whole bunch of overly complicated contact workflows that just don't work when you start to have a bunch of different events and information getting overwritten, and it's a mess and a nightmare, right? It becomes much easier when everything has clear, clean representation and exists as its own entities and can go through the workflows. If you guys have any questions on how to set up different types of email automations inside of HubSpot using Event Happily, feel free to ask a question in the comments, shoot us a DM on LinkedIn, or reach out to us at care@hapily.com. We are here to help. Hope you have an awesome day.